My name's Alison Coates. I work in the School of Health Sciences. I'm the director of the B-Nurse programme there. If medicine is an arm of the state by which control is exerted on the population, what purpose does it serve the state to develop a whole subsystem called psychiatry? Why not just lock people up in prisons who don't conform? And also, does this role exist throughout different political systems? Does it serve the same purpose, say, in the East as it does in the West?
Your first question is, why don't people just lock people up in prison who don't conform? You want to answer your own question?
I know how I would answer that. I just wondered what your explanation would be.
I don't have an explanation. I have a statement. Because it's illegal for the state to lock up anyone who has not been duly convicted of a crime. Thank God, this is the rule of law, a great English inheritance. And in America, you cannot go to a prison and say, please let me in. The judge cannot say, I don't like your face, you are acting crazy, I will lock you up. There has to be a justification for it. Now, there are only two justifications. One is law-breaking, the other one is mental illness. And this is what I have objected to. This is where I came into the picture. I realized this when I was 5 years old. This is not something which I learned in medical school, that there's something wrong with this system. Now, why do we have this system? Because modern society needs it, because a criminal law is too blunt an instrument. It does not protect people from civil injuries. There's a huge literature on this. Some of it was contributed by a good friend of mine, a wonderful man, died too young, Irving Goffman, famous American sociologist, and many others, around this subject. We don't have to invent the wheel. This is psychiatry. If we didn't have psychiatry, we would have to invent it. It fills a huge gap, because most people who annoy people are not criminals. Most people who are locked up in America are totally innocent in a human sense of any crime. 90% are lower class blacks locked up for drug offenses. What's a drug offense? That you sell heroin or cocaine to somebody who wants to buy it. That used to be called free trade by Adam Smith. Thank you for laughing. If you sell alcohol, that's trade. If you sell cigarettes, that's trade. If you sell marijuana, 20 years in prison. And if you are upper class, then maybe 2 weeks in a mental hospital. Or if you're a movie star, then you go into rehab. And then the judge says, okay, you have already served enough time. So it is a social control mechanism that supplements. If you read my books, you will see more than once I have said psychiatry is not a branch of medicine. It's a branch of the law. Unlike endocrinology or ophthalmology. Psychiatry has always been a branch of the law. We have mental health laws everywhere. What's our mental health laws? We don't have cancer laws. We don't have pneumonia laws. It's obvious. That doesn't mean that I am against voluntary psychiatry anymore. I am against voluntary religion. I'm entirely in favor of psychiatric acts between consenting adults. It's a play on sexual acts between consenting adults. Including lobotomy. You want a lobotomy? Have one. Electric shock? Have one. I believe in freedom and responsibility. But it should be your decision, and preferably you should know what you are doing. But if not, that's your problem. After all, getting married is very dangerous. Nobody can stop you by law from that. Having a child is very dangerous. Very dangerous. You can have a malformed child. You all know how. Life is full of terrible risks that we take. And it's not limited to psychiatry.
The second question was just, does this situation exist in all societies, you would say? There's no difference between how psychiatry is aligned to the legal system in other countries. It serves the same purpose, does it?
course, it plays the same role, except it doesn't play the same role. It's wonderful. I mean, the English papers used to be full of, American papers used to be full of the political abuse of psychiatry in the Soviet Union. If they do it, it's an abuse. If we do it, it's great medicine. What was abusive about it? They had diagnoses, creeping schizophrenia and whatnot. We had, you know, in America, in the 1830s, 1840s, before the Civil War, there was a diagnosis called drapetomania. In a way, I have, by accident, discovered this historical fact. Since then, this has become quite well known. I wrote a very early paper before. If you go to the internet, you can see that the very first paper on this subject was written by me. You know what drapetomania was? Well, you know. Thank God. Made up a Latin term, the slave that ran away from Louisiana to Chicago, because he was crazy. He had it so good, exactly like in the Soviet Union. It's so good here, everything is for you. If you want to leave, you must be crazy. Exactly like the mental hospital. You go in voluntarily and you say, doctor, this has been wonderful. I'm now ready to leave. Then they clock your door. Now, these are facts I'm telling you, it's not an interpretation. And I'm saying that there can be no progress in this field until this is taken care of. First, you have to abolish slavery. Then you can work on freedom. I mean, that has been a curse on American history, which still hasn't been worked out. Once you make one of these mistakes, it's very serious. The consequences of slavery are very much alive in America today.
Hello, my name is Mary Nettle. I talked to you briefly earlier. I'm very interested about what you're saying, but I'm thinking that you're saying that psychiatry treatment for mental illness is okay as long as you agree to have it. Now, that doesn't take into account the power imbalance that psychiatrists can exert an awful lot of influence on you, which means that you may agree to something like electroconvulsive therapy or shock therapy, which if you had had all the information about the side effects, the long-term, short-term, if you were in a position at that time to actually absorb that information. So I think it's very difficult to actually have voluntary treatment in the current psychiatric way of practicing.
Terrific point. But you are making two different points which I like to separate. You sort of added on that it's very difficult to have voluntary treatment in the current situation. Now let's go back to the first half of what you said, which is a power imbalance between an expert and a layman. That is the underside of Adam Smith's free market and specialization in any field. Supposing you have a defective washing machine, now whether or not you should spend 20 pounds repairing it or getting a new one may depend on the opinion of an expert, and so on. Supposing you want to go and you are looking for a hotel in Timbuktu in Africa, and you like to travel, well, unless you know someone who has been there, you may depend on the opinion of a travel agent. This is, you are pointing out to the problem of having to be a careful decision maker in a free society. I have no answer to that. But it connects to the second part of the question. The answer to that dovetails with the importance that the expert should be on tap, not on top. That's an American, I didn't make that up. It says it all. He should not have any power over you. He should not be able to force you, use the force of the government. The force means the state, some agent of the state, whether he is in a blue coat or in a white coat. But your question is insoluble because it cuts across. Supposing you have a back problem, which I had, a lot of people have, but should you have an operation for it or not? And your life can depend on it. Because maybe it will work, it very often works, it very often doesn't work, and the person is permanently in pain and worse off than before. It's a gamble. What do you know about the person you marry? going back to that. You certainly don't know what kind of child you're going to have. I mean, biologically.
My name is Tracy Holly. I do a lot of teaching input in higher education with mental health nurses and social workers, and I'm an expert by experience as I'm a mental health survivor of depression and anxiety. And I would just like to know your opinion about when dealing with really vulnerable people, whether they be children or adults, would you go about protecting people who haven't got as much information?
I can give you a very glib answer. I don't mean it glibly, but that's all I can say is by giving them more information, by warning them against do-gooders. That's again an old American saying. I think David Thoreau, the famous writer, anti-slave abolitionist, said, if I knew that tomorrow morning a man is coming to me and would say, I am from the government, I am here to help you, I would run as fast and as far as my legs would carry me. That was David Thoreau, right? Now, again, that paraphrases, instead, you have to give people information if you want to help them with this informational problem. And again, I am now going to say something which which I hope will not offend any of you. There is a strain of paternalism, what I call paternalism, in the last few questions. And I'm a strong believer in every individual having a God-given right and obligation to assume responsibility for his or her life, which includes informing himself in this day and age. If you don't inform yourself, you are a dead duck. This is why intelligent people are eager to have their children well educated, so that they cannot be too easily fooled, misled. Why did all these people stand in line for the hard rock landing? Evidently they made a mistake, or they thought they made a mistake. I mean, trivial examples illustrate this point. Who informed them? Nobody. They were misinformed. And you see, who will inform them? How do you tell the difference between the person who is out to inform you or misinform you? I have been attacked. Not anymore. I'm too old now for people to bother. Which is just as well. For misinforming people. For turning people away from, quote, psychiatric help. It's correct. One man's information, other man's misinformation. Are you satisfied? Because this is a very important question. It touches on the other question about the power imbalance.
I think knowledge is power, and information is very empowering. And for myself, coming from a victim of mental health services, let alone this so-called illness, because I've been informed, I've got education about it, I've learnt about, myself as an individual up against professionals, etc. I know the importance of being informed, and sort of readdressing that power imbalance too with that.
But look, let me give you a personal example. We are all in this game together because we are all in life. How come I am sitting here now? How come I wasn't killed during the war, in the Holocaust? My parents, my family, my brother, we were better informed and decided to leave Hungary in 1938. Well, what was the difference between all the hundreds of thousands of Jews and also some non-Jews who left Europe, who left Germany, and who didn't leave? Information. The typical belief was nothing can happen here. This is the land of Goethe. Goethe was a great German poet. This is a land of culture, and Germany was. Germany between 1870 and 1933 was the most cultured, most advanced country in literature, in science, in movie making, in technology, in physics. And